The spit hit her cheek at exactly 6:47 in the morning. Not rain, not snow blown in from the Montana winter clawing at Ruby's diner windows. Spit from Braden Chandler's mouth. 17 years old, $80,000 watch catching fluorescent light, murk that said he'd never heard the word no and never would. Rosa Martinez didn't move. 43 years old, 2 jobs, varicose veins, turning every step into warfare against her own body. She stood frozen with coffee pot in hand while 17 tables of breakfast customers watched in silence, so complete you could hear the Pepsi cooler humming in the corner. The spit ran down her cheek, slow, deliberate as humiliation. She didn't wipe it. 30 seconds earlier, she'd asked if he wanted more coffee. Polite, professional. The smile she wore like Kevlar through 10-hour shifts that left her feet bleeding inside discount sneakers. Braden had leaned back chair on 2 legs, lord surveying his kingdom. This coffee tastes like piss. She'd kept her voice steady. I'll get you a fresh pot, sir. Did I ask for your opinion, waitress? He'd turned to his 3 friends in leather jackets, all laughing on cue like trained wolves. Difference between you and me. I can buy this whole dump. You're one health crisis away from living in your car. Rosa's face showed nothing, years of practice, absorbing abuse from people who thought tipping 8% made them generous. But in booth 7, Maya Martinez watched her mother's humiliation through tears building behind black frame glasses too big for her 8-year-old face. She wore her father's Marine jacket, the one with Corporal David Martinez stitched above the pocket, the one that hung past her knees and smelled like the man who died 2 years ago under Afghan sky. And in booth 12, Jack Morrison stopped mid-bite of eggs that suddenly tasted like failure and ash. Braden's voice carried performance for his audience. You want advice? Try being prettier. Good-looking waitresses get better tips. His friends erupted again, hyenas trained to laugh at blood. Rosa did the math running electric in her exhausted brain. Rent due in 6 days, Maya's inhaler prescription, the Civic making that grinding sound, meaning expensive and soon. She couldn't afford to lose this job. Couldn't afford dignity when survival hung by threads this thin. That's when Braden gathered spit in his mouth and launched it at her face. The diner went silent, not quiet, but held breath of a world teetering on something irreversible. Rosa's hand trembled around the coffee pot. One swing, that's all it would take. Shatter that smug face in this humiliation and glass spray and satisfaction and unemployment. But then rent and medicine and that grinding sound. She wiped the spit away with her apron. In front of everyone, I'll get that fresh coffee. Her voice didn't shake. Jack would remember that later, the steadiness. The dignity she refused to surrender even as everything else was stripped away. Maya slid out of booth 7, 60 pounds soaking wet, drowning in her dead father's jacket backpack with homework, an inhaler, and photo of dad in dress blues. She walked straight to Braden's table on legs that shook but didn't stop. Apologize to my mom. Her voice came out small, shaking, but clear as bells in the silence. Braden looked at her like something scraped off his shoe. What did you say, kid? I said, apologize. Maya's hands were fists. My dad said real men apologize when they're wrong. And you're wrong. The diner stayed silent, but now people were looking, really looking, at this tiny girl standing up to a teenage monster 3 times her size. Braden's face twisted into something ugly. Your dad's dead, kid. Maybe if he was smarter, he'd still be. The sound of Jack Morrison's chair scraping back echoed like thunder in a canyon. Jack Morrison, 62 years old, 6'2", shoulders that still filled out his leather vest after 40 years of riding and fighting and surviving. Scar down his left temple from all shrapnel outside Basra in '91, the kind that aches when weather turns cold, which in Montana in December meant it ached every damn day and twice on Sunday. He walked slow, deliberate, boots on linoleum. Each step measured the way men move when violence sits on their shoulder like a trained hawk waiting for permission. Braden's friends shut up immediately, survival instinct kicking in too late for their ringleader. But Braden's 17 years of never facing consequences didn't have that instinct yet. This your grandpa come to defend the stand-up. Jack's voice came out quiet, steel wrapped in gravel and time. What I said, stand up, son. Braden laughed, but it came out nervous. Pride wouldn't let him back down, though. Not in front of his friends, not in front of everyone watching. He stood. Jack looked at him and saw a child. Not a monster. A child who'd never been taught how to be a man. You're going to apologize to Rosa, each word clear and separate, and you're going to mean it. Then you're going to sit down, finish your meal quietly, and think about what kind of man you want to be. Braden's face went red. Rage and humiliation fighting for dominance. Fuck you, old man. Do you know who my father is? Don't particularly care. Richard Chandler, as in Chandler Industries, as in he owns this town. One phone call, and you'll son, Jack's voice went gentle, almost kind. I've had 17-year-olds point AK-47s at me in the desert. You think I'm scared of your daddy's lawyers? Something shifted in the diner. Recognition that this wasn't just another old man. This was something different. Something forged in places where fear meant death and hesitation meant watching your brothers bleed out in sand. Jack did something unexpected then. He knelt. Slowly, old knees, crackling like kindling, getting down to Maya's eye level. This man scarred and weathered and dangerous looking, making himself small for an 8-year-old girl. You okay, little warrior? Maya nodded, eyes still wet. Your dad was Corporal David Martinez, 10th Mountain Division. How did you? I recognize his unit patch. Jack touched the emblem on Maya's too big jacket. I was 1st Marine Division. Different branch, same fight. Your daddy was a hero. Braden said Braden's scared. That's why he talks like that. Scared people lash out. Brave people protect, like you just did for your mama. Maya's tears stopped. Something in Jack's voice, the way he spoke to her like an equal, not a child, a warrior. Will you help my mom? Jack's eyes went distant, haunted, seeing ghosts that had lived in his chest for 2 decades. Inside Jack's head, 2 faces materialized. Not one, 2. Sarah, his daughter. 18 years old, summer job at a different diner. Bright smile that could light up rooms. 20 years ago, different rich kid, different humiliation. She'd called, said there was a problem, some guy being inappropriate. Jack had been on a long-haul truck driving cross-country 2 days from home. Handle it, baby. You're strong. He hadn't driven back, hadn't taken it seriously. 3 days later, police at his door. Sarah overdosed. The rich kid who'd harassed her never got charged. His father paid people off. And Michael Brennan, a brother, Iraq war veteran, 2 tours, came home with demons that wouldn't sleep and shrapnel scars that wouldn't heal. Called Jack 8 years ago. Said the darkness was closing in. Said he needed help. Jack had said, be strong, push through, man up. Michael had put a gun in his mouth 3 days later. The brotherhood had dissolved after Michael. Couldn't look at each other without seeing what they'd failed to do. 10 years of silence. 10 years of guilt living in Jack's chest like shrapnel that wouldn't stop bleeding. 2 failures. 2 people who'd called for help. 2 times Jack had chosen words over action. 2 times he'd been wrong. Sarah. Michael. 2 ghosts. 2 reasons his hands shook every morning. Yeah, little warrior. Jack's voice came back to the present. I'll help. This time he was showing up. He stood turned back to Braden. Last chance. Apologize. Braden pulled out his phone. I'm calling my father. You do that. Jack's hands trembled. Just slightly. But this time the trembling wasn't weakness. It was rage compressed into diamond-hard purpose. This time he wouldn't fail. This time he'd show up. For Sarah, for Michael, for Maya, for everyone who'd ever needed someone to stand between them and cruelty. Richard Chandler walked into Ruby's diner 10 minutes later like he owned it. Because he did. Not legally, but in every way that mattered in Pinewood, Montana. 55 years old tailored coat over cashmere sweater shoes worth more than Rosa's monthly rent. The kind of confidence that comes from 3 generations of money and certainty that money solves everything. Jack Morrison, still causing trouble, Richard. Your boy was disrespectful. Thought you'd want to know. Disrespectful how he spit on a woman. Richard's face flickered. Anger, but not at his son. At Jack for making this public. Braden is this true silence. Sulking. Answer me. She was being slow. Yes or no? Did you spit on her? Long pause. Yes, something passed across Richard's face then. Not shame exactly, but recognition. He turned to Rosa. Mrs. Martinez, I apologize for my son's behavior. I'll be handling this privately. He pulled out his wallet. Crisp hundreds. 5 of them. For your trouble. Rosa looked at the money. $500. 6 weeks of Maya's medication. But taking it meant this is over, sweep it under the rug, nothing changes. She pushed the money away. I don't want your money, Mr. Chandler. I want your son to understand what he did was wrong. The diner inhaled collectively. Richard's expression went dangerous. Mrs. Martinez, I'm trying to do the right thing here. Then teach your son to do the right thing. Money doesn't fix everything. Sheriff Tom Dalton pushed through the door, then late 50s local authority badge catching light like a warning. Everyone knew Chandler Industries was the town's biggest employer. Dalton's re-election depended on Richard Chandler's support. What's the problem here? Richard's voice came out smooth. My son had a misunderstanding with staff. I've offered compensation. Mrs. Martinez refuses. I think we need to discuss trespassing. Jack's jaw tightened. Trespassing? He's going to throw her out for not accepting hush money. Dalton's hand rested on his service weapon. Casual but clear. Jack, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Tom, you watch this kid spit on a woman, and you're going to let him walk. I'm going to maintain order. What you do next decides whether you're part of that order or part of the problem. Jack looked at Maya, still standing there, watching adults negotiate away her mother's dignity the way they always did. The way they'd negotiated away his daughter's justice 20 years ago. The way they'd ignored Michael Brennan's pleas for help 8 years ago. Different diner, different sheriff, same outcome. Rich kid walks. Working person gets crushed. Veterans calling for help get platitudes instead of presence. 20 years ago, Jack had backed down when Sarah needed him. 8 years ago, Jack had offered words when Michael needed action. Not today, not ever again. Maya, Jack's voice came out quiet. Go to booth 7, get your backpack, but do it, warrior. She ran. Jack turned to Rosa. Mrs. Martinez, you're coming with me. What? I can't. My shift, your shift just ended. You work for me now. I don't understand. You will. Jack pulled out his phone in the parking lot. December cold bit through his vest, but he didn't feel it. Speed dial number 1. The number he hadn't called in 10 years. Not since the Brotherhood dissolved after Michael Brennan's funeral. Not since they'd all gone their separate ways, unable to look at each other without seeing their collective failure. 2 rings. Marcus. Jack. That's you. Yeah, brother. Silence. Then Marcus's voice came back different, careful. Been a long time, too long. Listen, I need the chapter. Ruby's Diner, 20 minutes. Jack, the Brotherhood hasn't ridden together in, I know, 10 years, since Michael. But we failed him because we didn't show up. I'm not failing anyone else, so I'm asking. Will you ride? Long pause. Jack could hear Marcus breathing, thinking, remembering Michael Brennan's funeral. The way they'd all stood and around his grave knowing they could have saved him if they'd just shown up instead of offering advice from distance. What happened? We ride today. For everyone we didn't ride for before. The line went quiet. Then Marcus's voice came back steady. All of us, everyone, 20 minutes. The line went dead. Jack turned to Rosa and Maya standing confused in the cold. Mrs. Martinez, you know the Iron Brotherhood. Rosa's face showed recognition and fear. The motorcycle club, that's us, or was. We disbanded 10 years ago. But I'm calling them back, for you, for Maya, for everyone we should have protected before. Jack, I appreciate what you did in there, but I can't get mixed up with what veterans who help people. We're not outlaws, ma'am. We failed someone once. A brother who needed help, and we weren't there. We've spent 10 years living with that. But failure only becomes permanent when you stop trying to make it right. Maya tugged her mother's sleeve. Mama, he's like Daddy. Look at his tattoo. Rosa looked. 1st Marine Division. Same as David's. Her eyes filled. David talked about you, Jack Morrison. Said you saved his unit in Kandahar. Said you were the best man he ever knew. Jack's expression shifted. Surprise, pain. David Martinez was my husband. Jack's throat closed. Your husband saved my life in Kandahar, twice. Called in air support when we were pinned down. Took fire meant for me. I owed him everything. And now his family needs help. So yeah, I'm showing up. Finally, the rumble started low, like distant thunder promising a storm. Then closer, louder, the ground trembling under their feet. Maya's eyes went wide. What is that? Jack smiled for the first time in what felt like years. That's family coming back together. They came around the corner in formation. Two abreast staggered military precision that spoke of years riding together and years apart remembering how. 23 motorcycles, 23 men, all wearing the same leather vest, the patch on back reading Iron Brotherhood MC Pinewood, Montana Est, 1987. At the lead rode Marcus Cole, 68 years old, white beard like Santa Claus, if Santa could bench press 300 pounds. President of the Iron Brotherhood, former Army Ranger. 2 tours in Vietnam he still saw every night when he tried to sleep. Beside him, Thomas Washington, 6'7", 280 pounds of solid muscle under his cut. They called him Bear for obvious reasons, but his smile when it came held nothing but gentleness. Behind them the rest, all veterans, all between 55 and 70, all weathered, scarred, dangerous looking, all kneeling down to Maya's eye level when they saw her. Marcus cut his engine. The silence after the roar felt like the world holding its breath. Who we riding for? Jack gestured to Rosa and Maya. Rosa Martinez and her daughter, David Martinez's family. Every biker went still. David Martinez, Marcus's voice came out reverent. 10th Mountain, same. Hell, Jack, you should have said. Marcus pulled off his sunglasses, eyes wet. That man saved half the coalition in Kandahar. We all owe him blood debt. He turned to Rosa. Ma'am, your husband saved my nephew's life in Afghanistan. Kid's name is Tommy Cole. Was pinned down by enemy fire. David Martinez exposed himself to covering fire to drag Tommy to safety. Got shot twice doing it. Kept going. Rosa was crying now. We owe your family a debt, and the Iron Brotherhood always pays its debts, even when we've been apart, even when we thought we'd failed too many times to deserve another chance. One by one, the brothers introduced themselves. William Chen, 65, former Army medic, Vietnam, still carried trauma kit on his bike. Sarah Mitchell, 62, Marine mechanic, who could fix any engine and earned her patch through skill, not gender. Raymond Kelly, 70, oldest member, Korean War, quiet as a ghost until he spoke, and then everyone listened. Carlos Rodriguez, 58, Iraq War Scout sniper with nightmares that riding helped quiet. Michael O'Brien, 67, former Army chaplain, spiritual center of the Brotherhood. He approached Jack separately. Been thinking about Michael Brennan a lot lately. Jack's hand started shaking again. Every day. We all failed him, brother. All of us, not just you. We told him to be strong when he needed us to be present. We gave him hotline numbers when he needed us to show up. We let him die alone because we didn't understand that brotherhood means more than patches and bikes. It means showing up even when it's hard. And now we don't fail again. Michael's voice was firm. That's why we came. That's why we'll keep coming. Because Michael Brennan is still calling us. Through every person who needs help. And we answer. Every time. And 12 others, each with a road name, each with a story, each with scars visible and invisible. Each of them carrying their own version of Michael Brennan's memory. Each of them ready to show up this time. Marcus looked at Jack. So what's the play? Braden Chandler needs to learn respect. His father thinks money solves everything. Sheriff's in the Chandler pocket. And we're going to teach the boy community service, hard work, humility. And if the Chandlers refuse, Jack's smile came out cold. Then we make it very uncomfortable for them to refuse. Rosa started to protest, but Jack cut her off. You're not asking. We're offering. This is what we do. What we should have been doing all along. We protect. We show up. We don't fail twice. Bear knelt down to Maya, produced a worn teddy bear from his saddlebag. My daughter's. She doesn't need it anymore. Thought you might want someone to keep you safe. Maya hugged the bear, looked up at Bear with wonder. Thank you, Mr. Bear. Bear's eyes went wet. Just Bear, little one, and you're welcome. 23 motorcycles pulled up to the gates of Richard Chandler's estate 30 minutes later. Mansion on the hill overlooking the whole town. Metaphor made concrete. Richard stood on his porch with Braden beside him. Sheriff Dalton and 4 deputies formed a line. Marcus cut his engine. The silence after the roar felt deafening. Richard, Marcus, this is private property. Public street. What do you want, Justice? I offered Mrs. Martinez compensation. Money isn't justice. Then what is? Jack stepped forward. Your son works, really works, service job, minimum wage, learns what it's like for the people he thinks he's better than. Braden exploded. I'm not working some shit job. Language. Richard's voice cracked like a whip. Then to Jack, absolutely not. Then we camp here, on this public street. 23 of us, 24-hour shifts, revving engines, making noise, drawing attention. Every news outlet in Montana will want to know why the Iron Brotherhood is protesting Richard Chandler. Richard's expression went calculating. You're blackmailing me. We're requesting accountability. There's a difference, long silence. 1 week. He works 1 week, then this is over. 1 month, 2 weeks. Final offer. Jack looked at Rosa. Her call. She thought about Maya, about David, about every person who'd ever been humiliated and had no recourse. 2 weeks. But I choose where he works. Braden Chandler stood in Ruby's diner the next morning, wearing a white apron and hairnet and rubber gloves he'd never touched in his life. Behind the line. Dishwashing station. Stacks of greasy plates, pans crusted with eggs, coffee cups with lipstick stains. Hot water, industrial soap manual labor. His face showed disgust, rage, humiliation in equal measure. Ruby, the diner owner, 70 years old and tough as boot leather, pointed at the dishes. You're going to wash everyone, by hand. No machine. You're going to scrub until your hands bleed, and then you're going to keep scrubbing. This is illegal. Your father agreed, so either wash or I call him and tell him you quit, which means the Brotherhood comes back. Braden grabbed a plate, started scrubbing. In the dining room, Maya sat in booth 7 with homework spread out. But really she was witnessing justice. Jack Marcus Bear and Doc Chen sat in the corner booth. Coffee and watching. Think it'll work? Marcus asked. Depends on the kid. Jack's voice came out tired. Some people can't change. Born broken. You don't believe that? I want to. But I've seen evil, Marcus. Real evil. Not all of it can be fixed. Doc Chen leaned forward. You thinking about Sarah? Jack's voice came out barely audible. Sarah and Michael. 2 ghosts, Marcus understood. 2 failures. 2 chances we didn't take. Jack's hands shook around his coffee cup. Sarah called me. I told her to handle it. She overdosed 3 days later. Michael called us. We told him to be strong. He put a gun in his mouth 3 days later. Same pattern, same failure, different victims. And Braden Chandler reminds you of the kid who hurt Sarah. Every second I look at him. But this time I'm here. This time I'm showing up. For Sarah, for Michael, for everyone we let down. So this isn't just about Maya's mother. This is redemption. Jack looked at his brothers, his weathered hands, his scars. Call it whatever you want. End result's the same. Kid learns, or doesn't. But at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know I showed up instead of offering empty words from safe distance. Maya approached their booth and climbed in beside Jack. You watch him a lot, making sure he does the work. No, you watch him like you're waiting for something. What are you waiting for? Jack looked at this 8-year-old, her father's eyes, observant, sharp, waiting to see if people can change. Can they? Don't know yet. That's why I'm watching. Maya nodded, satisfied. My dad said you were sad sometimes. Is that why your dad talked about me a lot? Said you saved his whole unit, but that you blamed yourself for things that weren't your fault. He said the bravest people are the ones still fighting even when they're broken inside. Jack pulled out his wallet. Small photo, worn, creased down the middle. Sarah, 18 years old, smiling. That's my daughter. Where is she? She died. Long time ago. Like my dad, different. But yeah, gone. Maya touched the photo gently. Can I see her every day? So she's not lonely? Jack's throat closed up. Yeah, little warrior. You can. In the kitchen, Braden's hands were raw and bleeding after 3 hours of scrubbing. A customer sent back eggs, 2 runny. Ruby handed the plate to Braden. Wash it, then make new eggs. I'm not a cook. You are now. Braden cracked eggs onto the griddle. They ran everywhere. Again. He tried, failed, again, and again. On the 7th attempt, he got it right. Ruby nodded, progress. Braden looked at his bleeding hands, at the eggs, at Rosa serving customers with grace despite varicose veins that turned every step into agony. Something shifted in his face. Not redemption yet, but the first crack. Sheriff Dalton approached Jack's bike in the parking lot that afternoon. "You're making powerful enemies. Already had powerful enemies. What's a few more? Richard Chandler isn't someone you cross. Then he shouldn't have raised a son who spits on women." Dalton's hand went to his weapon. "Jack, I'm trying to help you. Back off, let this go, or things get complicated for you and your brothers. Tom, you and I served together, first Gulf War. You were a good man. What happened?" Dalton's expression showed pain and anger fighting. "Life happened. Pension's not enough. Kids need college, wife got sick, medical bills. Chandler offered solutions. He bought you, he helped me. There's a difference." Is there a long pause? "1 week, Jack. Then I stopped being nice." News spread fast in Pinewood. The Brotherhood versus the Chandlers. People chose sides. The local mechanic refused to service Chandler vehicles. The bank manager pressured Brotherhood members about loans. The diner filled with supporters, leaving extra tips for Rosa. Chandler Industries threatened to cut jobs. Veterans rallied behind the Brotherhood. Business owners feared economic retaliation. The town was fracturing. End of day 3. Braden pulled off his apron, hands wrapped in bandages, exhausted. Rosa approached him. "Same time tomorrow." Braden looked at her, really looked for the first time. "Does it ever get easier, the standing, the ache in your feet?" "No, you just get used to it. I don't know how you do this every day. Because my daughter eats. Because we have a home. Because dignity isn't negotiable." Braden went silent. Then his voice came out broken. "I'm sorry for what I said, what I did. Apologies are a start. Change is the finish." Braden pulled out his phone, showed Rosa a video. "There's something you need to see." The video showed the Chandler Industries warehouse. Workers loading trucks at night. Unmarked trucks. What am I looking at? Something my father doesn't know I know. Those trucks aren't carrying mining equipment. Then what's stolen goods? My father's been running a fencing operation for 2 years. Uses the legitimate business as cover. Those workers. Some of them are being trafficked. I found the records. Rosa's blood went cold. "Why are you telling me? Because I've been watching you, how you treat people, how you keep going even when everything's against you. And I realize my father's a monster, and I'm turning into him. And I don't want to be him. I don't want to be the person who looks away when people need help. Like Michael Brennan." Rosa's expression shifted. "You know about Michael Brennan?" "Jack told me." Braden's voice came out quiet. "Told me about a veteran who called for help and everyone gave him advice instead of showing up. And how the Brotherhood dissolved because they couldn't live with that failure. And how they're back now because they're done failing people. I want to be like that. I want to show up instead of looking away." Rosa took the phone, looked at the video again. The hollow-eyed workers, the armed guards, the human misery hidden behind corporate logos. Show Jack, show the Brotherhood, show everyone. And Braden Chandler, 17 years old, who 3 days ago had spit on a woman and thought himself untouchable, took the first real step toward becoming someone worth being. The muzzle flash came from high ground northeast, maybe 60 yards into the tree line. Marcus's brain processed the geometry before conscious thought caught up angle of trajectory, probable distance, shooter elevation. Old instincts from a war that ended before most of these trees had grown tall enough to hide a man. He signaled left without looking, trusting Cole to see it, trusting decades of unspoken communication between men who'd fought side by side in different wars but learned the same lessons. Cole peeled off his bike in one fluid motion, disappearing into forest shadow like he'd been born to it. Marcus went right, slower, more deliberate, using terrain the way you used it when you'd learned that flat ground was a cemetery waiting to happen. The rain had softened to drizzle, but the ground was soup mud, sucking at boots every step, a gamble between speed and silence. Behind him, the convoy had scattered into cover positions. Phantom's truck sat shielded by a cluster of pines, Emma and Sarah pressed against the floorboards of Doc's body covering them both. Jackson and Tommy had dismounted, were flanking wide military precision despite bad knees and bodies that protested every quick movement. Alex was down, but conscious Cole's jacket pressed against the shoulder wound to slow the bleeding. The sniper had repositioned. Smart. Professional. Marcus tracked boot prints in mud, deep, evenly spaced, no panic. Military boots. Good ones. Vibram soles, probably Danner or Salomon. This wasn't some tweaker with a hunting rifle. This was someone who knew how to kill and had done it enough times to stay calm under pressure. Marcus moved tree to tree, his body remembering rhythms his conscious mind had tried to forget. Test weight before committing. Breathe shallow so your chest doesn't move. Become texture instead of shape, shadow instead of silhouette. He'd done this in Vietnam, hunting VC through jungle, so thick the air itself felt green and alive and hostile. 50 years ago, he'd been good at it. Too good, maybe. Good enough that they kept sending him out, kept using him until the boy from Oregon, who'd enlisted to serve his country, became something harder and stranger and less recognizable as the kid who'd kissed his mother goodbye at the bus station. A branch snapped. Not Marcus, not Cole. The sniper shifting position, again probably trying to get line of sight on the truck on Emma. Marcus froze mid-step, became stone, let his eyes do all the work. There, 50 feet up, elevated position behind a fallen log. Orange hunting vest, visible through scope. Amateur mistake prioritizing legal requirements over tactical invisibility. But the rifle was professional. Suppressor high-end optics. The kind of weapon that costs more than most people's monthly rent. Cole appeared on the opposite side like a ghost materializing from rain and shadow. They'd done this before, not together exactly, but with other men in other wars. The dance was universal. Pin from one side, flank from the other, collapse the kill zone until the target had nowhere to go but surrender or die. The sniper saw Cole first, started to swing the rifle smooth and practiced no wasted motion. Marcus moved. Covered 15 feet in 3 seconds that stretched into hours, his body screaming, protest from ribs that had cracked in 72 and never healed quite right from a knee, that ground bone on bone every time it flexed, from a back that remembered carrying wounded men through jungle and had never forgiven him for it. He hit the sniper low and hard, driving both of them into mud and dead leaves and the loamy smell of forest rot. The rifle went flying, disappeared into underbrush. They rolled, grappling, the sniper younger and stronger, but Marcus had something more valuable, absolute certainty that failure meant a little girl got dragged back to a man who'd kill her incrementally over months or years until there was nothing left worth killing. The sniper got an elbow into Marcus's ribs right where they'd cracked. Pain bloomed white and sharp, turned his vision gray at the edges. Marcus absorbed it, channeled it, used it to fuel the kind of violence that civilization spent centuries trying to sand off men and never quite managed. Cole arrived, grabbed the sniper's arms, twisted them behind his back. With the efficiency of someone who'd done this exact thing in different countries for different reasons. The sniper's face hit mud. He spat, struggled, went still. When he realized it was finished, Marcus caught his breath, tasted copper where he'd bitten his cheek hard enough to draw blood. His hands were shaking, adrenaline, age, the collision of past and present, happening inside his skull, like an explosion in slow motion. "Who sent you?" His voice came out rougher than intended. The sniper laughed, wet and ugly mud between his teeth. "You already know. Say it anyway." The sniper turned his head just enough to look at Marcus with eyes that had seen things too. That was the problem with modern warfare. It made too many men like this. Men who could kill strangers for money and sleep fine afterward. Men who'd learned to turn off whatever part of the brain made people feel bad about causing suffering. Nero Castellano. And he's sending more. A lot more. You killed his cousin's marriage, his reputation. Family means something to these people. Means everything. We didn't kill anything. Ray killed it himself when he put hands on a child. The sniper's smile had blood in it. Doesn't matter. Perception is reality in their world. Ray says you stole his property. Nero says nobody steals from family. So here we are. She's not property. Try telling them that. The sniper coughed. They already know where you're going, your safe house, the quarry. Nero's had people watching it for 3 hours. He's got 30 men up there right now, turning it into a kill box. You ride in, you don't ride out. The information landed cold and hard. Marcus and Cole exchanged glances. Their advantage had evaporated. Defensive position compromised. Enemy holding high ground with numbers and preparation. Cole pulled zip ties from his jacket pocket, secured the sniper's wrists, then his ankles. Checked him for weapons and found 2 knives, a backup pistol, and an ankle holster, and a phone that showed 19 missed calls from a contact labeled simply boss. Marcus took the phone, scrolled through messages. Most were encrypted, but a few text fragments were visible. Status, where are they? Kill the old one first, break the others. The sniper watched him read. You think you're heroes, protecting some kid you don't even know. But you're just old men playing soldier, pretending the world still works the way it did when you were young. It doesn't. Power wins, money wins. You lose. Marcus pocketed the phone. We'll see. They left him tied to a tree, conscious but immobile, close enough to the road that someone would find him eventually, but far enough that it wouldn't be tonight. The rifle went into the river, watched it sink into black water that would rust the firing pin into uselessness. The ammunition got scattered into underbrush where it would corrode before anyone found it. Back at the convoy, Doc had Alex stabilized. The bullet had gone clean through the shoulder, missing bone, and Major Vessel's either lucky or the sniper had aimed to wound instead of kill. Probably the latter. Nero wanted them scared, wanted them making mistakes born from fear and desperation. Marcus wouldn't give him that satisfaction. The convoy started moving again, slower now, every bike scanning shadows, every unexpected sound, triggering fight-or-flight responses that had been honed in different wars, but never quite faded. They made it 4 miles before Jackson's voice crackled over the radio. Headlights. Multiple vehicles. Coming fast from behind. How many? 4? Maybe 5. Not trying to hide. They want us to know they're coming. Can we outrun them? Not with the truck. Not in these conditions. Phantom's voice was steady, but Marcus heard the fear underneath. Road's too narrow. We try to rush, and we end up in the valley. Then we need a stop, somewhere defensible. Marcus scanned the road ahead. His mind worked through tactical considerations. Visibility, cover, escape routes, acceptable losses. Their lights ahead. Gas station. Only thing operating within 20 miles, probably. The gas station looked like it had been abandoned by Hope sometime in the 90s and reluctantly resurrected by necessity. 2 pumps with analog displays that probably hadn't been updated since Carter was president. Small store attached lights on inside, dim and flickering. A pickup truck parked near the door, old enough to have character, new enough to run. An old man stood in the doorway as they pulled in, rifle cradled in his arms. Not pointing it yet, but ready to his body language, screaming suspicion and fear in equal measure. 70 years old, maybe, face weathered by Oregon sun and rain and decades of small disappointments. The convoy stopped. Engines idled. Marcus dismounted slowly, hands visible, body language, projecting calm while his eyes tracked exits and cover, and how fast he could close distance if this went bad. We need fuel. His voice stayed level, reasonable. In 5 minutes to catch our breath. We'll pay cash and be gone. The old man's eyes moved across the bikes, the leather, the patches that marked them as Iron Brotherhood. His grip tightened on the rifle. Not welcome here. Heard about you on the scanner. Kidnapping, child endangerment. Whole state's looking for you. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's not what happened. That's what they're saying. That's what dispatch is saying. That's what the sheriff's department is telling everyone within 100 miles. They're lying. The old man spat into gravel. That's what kidnappers always say. The truck door opened before Marcus could respond. Sarah climbed out first, then helped Emma down, the girl moving, stiff and careful, like everything hurt. They walked forward together, Emma pressed against her mother's side, both of them small and fragile in the fluorescent light that made everyone look half dead. Emma walked past Marcus, past the bikes, and the men who'd promised to protect her, right up to the old man with his rifle and his judgment and his absolute certainty about what was happening here. Her voice came out, quiet but clear truth, stripped of everything but itself. They didn't kidnap me. They saved me. She pulled up her sleeves, showed bruises, the fingerprint marks where Ray's hands had gripped hard enough to break blood vessels. Turned her head, showed where hair had been ripped out in clumps, the scalp still raw and weeping. Lifted her shirt just enough to show ribs that had been kicked or punched or both, purple and yellow and green in a timeline of violence. That man, my stepfather, did this. Has been doing this. For 2 years. My mom looked away. Our neighbors looked away. Police came once, and Ray told them I fell down the stairs, and they believed him because it was easier than caring. Emma paused. Let the evidence speak for itself. These men, they're the only ones who helped. The old man's face changed. Something behind his eyes shifted memory, maybe, or recognition, or the specific kind of pain that came from seeing your own failures reflected in someone else's suffering. His wife appeared in the doorway behind him, smaller, older gray hair, pulled back in a bun that belonged to a different era. She looked at Emma, and her face did something complicated. Grief and rage and understanding all fighting for space. The wife touched her husband's arm, gentle but absolute. Carl, let them through. But the scanner said, I know what the scanner said. Her voice was soft iron. I also know what I'm seeing. And I'm seeing a child who needed help and didn't get it until now. I'm seeing men who showed up when everyone else looked away. Carl lowered the rifle slowly, reluctantly, like he was giving up more than a tactical advantage. His face worked through emotions he probably didn't have names for. Fill up, no charge. And there's coffee inside. Hot chocolate for the girl. Marcus nodded. Didn't say thank you because some things were bigger than gratitude. Some things existed in a space where words were inadequate. The bikes moved to pumps. Sarah guided Emma inside, one arm wrapped tight around her daughter, like she was afraid someone would steal her if she let go. Inside smelled like decades of cigarette smoke, burnt coffee, and the particular sadness of places that had outlived their purpose but kept existing anyway. The wife, her name tag said Margaret, put on a fresh pot of coffee, made hot chocolate the way grandmothers do with real milk and actual chocolate, and the kind of care that comes from understanding exactly what absence of care does to children. Emma wrapped her hands around the mug. The same gesture she'd made at the clubhouse, like warmth was something precious and temporary, not to be trusted. Margaret watched her with eyes that knew things, that recognized the specific way trauma reshaped a body, the way it made you flinch before contact happened, made you apologize before anyone accused you of wrongdoing. How old are you, honey? 11. Emma's voice was small. Margaret's hands shook as she poured coffee for the adults. Her husband stood by the window, watching the road, the rifle now propped against the wall instead of held ready. He was doing his own calculations, weighing what the law said against what his eyes showed him, trying to reconcile the disconnect. Marcus's burner phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. Just a photo. No message. His blood went cold. A woman, mid-30s, dark hair, nurse scrubs torn at the shoulder. Tied to a chair, duct tape across her mouth, terror in her eyes that was specific and profound. Behind her, concrete wall, industrial setting, and spray-painted in red Nero's snake-tail logo. Marcus stared at the photo, his mind working through implications and threats, and the terrible arithmetic of impossible choices. Another text arrived. Just coordinates in 3 words, trade or die. Phantom appeared beside him, must have come in through the back door, saw the phone, saw the photo. His face didn't just change, it shattered, every carefully maintained piece of composure falling away to reveal the raw wound underneath. That's Sarah. His voice barely made it past his throat. My daughter, Sarah Walker. Marcus had known Phantom had a daughter, knew the rough outline of the story, DUI crash wife, and son dead daughter survived, but Phantom had been too consumed by guilt and alcohol to be a father afterward. Hadn't seen her in years, was trying to earn the right to be in her life again, one sober day at a time. Another text, you have something of Nero's. He has something of yours. Fair trade, the girl for the woman. You have 2 hours. After that, we start removing fingers. Phantom's hand found the counter, gripped it hard enough that his knuckles went white. I can't. His voice broke. I can't let her die because I came here. Because I tried to help. Make the trade, Reaper. Please make the trade. Marcus looked at Emma, at Sarah, at the fragile possibility of escape they'd built over the last few hours. Looked at Phantom's face, at the desperation and guilt and love that had been buried under alcohol and self-loathing for 12 years, but was still there, still capable of destroying him. We don't trade. His voice came out harder than intended. We get them both. How Phantom's laugh was broken glass. Nero has 30 men at the quarry. We have 6 bikes and a truck. We're outgunned, outmanned, and out of time. Marcus pulled out his phone, started scrolling through contacts he hadn't used in years, numbers that belonged to men who were probably eating dinner or watching television or preparing for bed. Men who'd think he was crazy for calling in a favor this big over something this personal. He found the first name, hit dial, 2 rings, then a voice rough with decades of cigarettes and hard living. Yeah, this is Reaper. I'm calling in the oath. Silence. The kind that stretched and pulled and held weight. Then, where Marcus rattled off coordinates for a junction 7 miles north. Rally point. We move from there. What's the situation? A little girl screamed and nobody came. Except us. Now we need everyone. The line went quiet. Marcus could hear breathing, could hear television in the background, could hear the weight of decision being made. Then I'm coming, and I'll bring my chapter. The second call went the same way. The third. Men who hadn't ridden in years promising they'd be there. Men who had responsibilities and arthritis and every reason to say no, saying yes instead, because 50 years ago they'd sworn an oath, and oaths mattered when nothing else did. By the eighth call, Marcus had commitments for over 100 bikes. Vietnam vets in their 70s, Desert Storm vets in their 60s, Iraq vets in their 50s. A rolling generation of men who'd learned that showing up was the only thing that separated the living from the ghosts. Cole approached while Marcus was making the ninth call. What are you doing out calling everyone? For a little girl you met 3 hours ago, Marcus looked at him. For a principle. For the idea that when children scream, adults answer. For something that matters more than safety. Cole nodded slowly. Then call faster, because those headlights behind us, they're getting closer. Outside, the pursuing vehicles had stopped at a ridgeline 3 miles back. Watching. Waiting. Probably reporting position to Nero, probably coordinating for a pincer movement. A sheriff's cruiser pulled into the gas station lights off, moving slow and careful. Deputy pulled himself out, Hispanic 30, with the look of someone who joined law enforcement because he believed it meant something and was slowly learning otherwise. Deputy Michael Carter, badge number 4457. His hand rested near his weapon but didn't draw. I got a call about a kidnapping in progress. Multiple suspects, armed and dangerous. Marcus positioned himself between the deputy and Emma. No kidnapping, rescue. That's not what dispatch says. Dispatch says a concerned father reported his daughter stolen by a motorcycle gang. Says there's warrants being issued. Says every cop in 3 counties is looking for you. Marcus kept his voice level. Dispatch is being fed information by a man who beats his 11-year-old stepdaughter. Check her arms. Check her ribs. Check the medical documentation that Doc's been photographing for the last 2 hours. Then tell me who the criminal is here. The deputy's eyes found Emma. Saw the bruises, the fear, the way she pressed against her mother like Sarah was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to quicksand. His face did something complicated, the arithmetic of law versus justice happening behind his eyes. I need to call this in. Standard procedure. You do that, you're sending her back to him. Sarah's voice cut across the room, sharp with fear and anger, and years of compliance finally breaking. Ray has friends, has connections, sheriff's in his pocket, half the department probably is. Last time someone reported him, the file disappeared. The social worker got transferred. Nothing happened except Ray got angrier, and I learned to hide the bottles better. The deputy's hand left his weapon. He looked at Marcus, at the bikes outside, at a situation spiraling in directions his training manual had never anticipated. I could arrest all of you. Take the girl into protective custody. You could. Marcus didn't blink. But you won't. How do you know? Because you became a cop for a reason. Somewhere under that uniform is someone who still thinks law and justice mean the same thing. And because that girl is 11 years old, and if you call this in, she'll be dead within a year. The deputy stood there, badge and gun and authority weighing against what his eyes were showing him. He pulled out his phone, made a call. Marcus tensed, ready to run, ready to fight, ready to do whatever came next. The deputy's voice was quiet when he spoke. Dad, it's Michael. I need advice. Pause. No, not about policy. About doing the right thing when the right thing isn't legal. He walked outside, talked for 7 minutes while the coffee got cold, and Emma finished her hot chocolate, and Phantom stared at his phone like he could change what it showed through force of will. Deputy Carter came back inside, unpinned his badge from his uniform, set it on the counter next to his weapon. His hands were steady, but his voice shook. Vincent Castellano owns half the sheriff's department, has for 15 years. My captain, 3 sergeants, probably a dozen deputies on his payroll looking the other way, making evidence disappear. He looked at Emma. If I call this in, he'll know within 10 minutes. And you'll have 30 men with badges hunting you down. Some of them actually believe they're doing the right thing. Most just know which side their bread's buttered on. So what are you doing? Cole's voice carried suspicion. The deputy gestured at his badge and gun sitting on the counter. Giving you a head start, and maybe finally doing what I should have done 15 years ago when I found out my captain was dirty. Why now? Why help us? Carter's jaw tightened. Because 3 years ago, my sister's husband beat her until she couldn't see straight, couldn't think straight, couldn't remember who she'd been before him. And I did nothing because I told myself it wasn't my business, wasn't my jurisdiction, wasn't my place to interfere. She's dead now. Pills. The coroner called it accidental overdose, but I know better. It wasn't an accident. It was 3 years of being broken until she forgot how to stay alive. He looked at Emma. I didn't help her. Maybe I can help you. Marcus studied the man's face, looking for deception, finding only desperate sincerity. How long before they realize you're not checking in 30 minutes? Maybe 40 if the dispatcher's having a slow night. Where's Nero setting up Old Quarry? North End, high ground 3 sides, protected by rock walls, single access road. He's got 30, maybe 40 men up there, turning it into a fortress. You go in there, you're walking into a kill box. Marcus looked at the map on his phone at the quarry location, at the tactical nightmare it represented. Then he looked at Emma, at Phantom's daughter's photo, at 2 people who needed saving, and 1 defensive position that made conventional rescue impossible. His mind worked through options and discarded them. Couldn't go around Quarry was the objective. Couldn't negotiate, Nero needed to make an example. Couldn't wait, Phantom's daughter had 2 hours, probably less. That left 1 option. Then we take it from him. Marcus's voice was calm. Before he's fully prepared. Before he's expecting us. That's insane. The deputy looked genuinely shocked. You'll be outnumbered 3 to 1. On his ground, with his weapons. Not if we bring our own army. Marcus held up his phone, showing the text threads. Over 100 riders, all chapters, all answering the oath. The deputy's eyes widened. You're really going to do this? You're going to charge a fortified position held by organized crime with a bunch of old bikers? Yes. You'll die. Maybe. Marcus pocketed his phone. But if we don't try, 2 people die for sure. I can live with maybe. I can't live with certainty. Carl, the gas station owner, handed Marcus a paper bag. Sandwiches, coffee in thermoses. You'll need fuel that isn't gasoline. Marcus took it. Some things existed beyond words in the space where gratitude was too small to contain what you felt. The convoy pulled out. Behind them, Nero's vehicles closed the gap. But ahead, something else was happening. Headlights were appearing from multiple directions, converging, assembling. The rally point at Junction 7 was filling with motorcycles. Dozens at first, then more, then more. A tide of chrome and leather and gray-haired men who dropped everything when the call came because they'd sworn an oath decades ago, and oaths didn't expire just because you got old. Ghost stepped forward as Marcus arrived. 68 years old, former Marine face like weathered stone, running the Salem chapter for 20 years. He'd come because Reaper called. He'd brought 43 riders because that's what you did when a brother needed everyone. Reaper, been a long time. Ghost's voice was gravel, not long enough. Marcus dismounted, feeling every one of his 62 years settling into joints that ground, and complained. Thanks for coming. You called. We came. That's the arrangement. Ghost looked at Phantom's truck, at Emma's small face visible through the back window. That the girl, yeah. Worth it. Marcus thought about Lynn, about 50 years of wondering if one more step or one more second could have changed everything. She screamed and nobody came. Nobody even tried. So yeah, she's worth it. Ghost nodded once. Then we ride, all of us, wherever this goes. Other riders gathered close. Faces Marcus recognized from different chapters, different states, different lives. They didn't ask for the full story. Didn't need it. A child needed protection, and that was enough. That was everything. They formed up. Military precision from men who'd learned it in Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan. Different wars, same lessons. Formation, discipline, Overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. Over 100 motorcycles organizing themselves into something that looked less like a club and more like an invasion force. Emma climbed out of the truck, stared at this army that had materialized because 7 men had asked for help. Her face showed wonder and fear, and something that might have been hope if she could remember what hope looked like. Why her voice was barely audible over engine noise. Why are all these people here? Marcus knelt his old knees protesting. Because when one calls, all answer. Because being brothers means you show up. Because he thought about Leon, about Lily, about everyone he'd failed, because some things matter more than safety. Emma's eyes filled. I'm just one person. I'm nobody special. You're wrong, Marcus's voice roughened. You're the reason we remember why we ride, why we exist. To stand between people who need help and people who want to hurt them. That's the whole point. That's the only point. She threw her arms around his neck, held on like he was the only solid thing in a universe made of water. Marcus held her back, this stranger child who'd become something more in the space of 4 hours and 60 miles of rain-soaked road. When she pulled back, she touched the dog tags around his neck. Who did these belong to? Someone I couldn't save, a long time ago, in Vietnam. Her name was Lynn. What happened to her? She died screaming for me to help her. And I was pinned down and I couldn't reach her. And I've heard that scream every day for 50 years. Is that why you came when I screamed? Marcus's throat tightened. Maybe. Or maybe I just finally learned to move toward the scream instead of carrying it afterward. He untied the red bandana from his arm. The one Lynn had given him before she died, the one he'd carried through 3 tours and 50 years of civilian life. Held it out to Emma. This belonged to her. To Lynn. Someone brave, someone who taught me that being scared and being strong aren't opposites. You can be both, usually are both. Emma took the bandana like it was made of something more precious than cloth. What if I lose it? You won't. And even if you do, she'd understand. Brave people always understand. Emma tied it around her wrist, clumsy, but determined. Thank you, Marcus stood. Addressed the assembled riders, his voice carrying across the junction. Most of you don't know the full story. Here's what matters. An 11-year-old girl was being beaten. Nobody helped, except us. Now Nero Castellano, some of you know, that name has her stepfather under his protection. Family loyalty. He's got 30 men at the old quarry. He's also got a hostage. A woman. Phantom's daughter. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't just rescue anymore. This was personal for multiple reasons. Marcus continued. Nero thinks we'll trade. The girl for the woman. Or we'll run, hide, disappear. He thinks we're just old men who'll fold when real danger shows up. His voice hardened. Let's show him what old men do when children scream. Let's show him what happens when you mistake old for weak. Let's show him why the oath still means something. The engines revved in response. 100 voices made of chrome and gasoline, and absolute commitment. The convoy reformed. Bigger now. Powerful. Phantom's truck in the center, surrounded by a shell of bikes that moved with military precision. Scout bikes ahead, flankers on both sides. Rear guard watching for pursuit. They rolled toward the quarry like thunder made mechanical. Inside the truck, Emma pressed against her mother bandana around her wrist, hot chocolate long since finished. Sarah held her, whispering things mothers say when they've failed and are trying desperately to make it right. Doc checked Emma's pulse, her breathing monitoring for shock that would come eventually but hadn't hit yet. Phantom drove with white knuckles, thinking about his daughter tied to a chair, thinking about whether redemption was possible for men who destroyed everything they loved and spent years trying to earn the right to love again. Marcus rode at the rear where leaders rode when they wanted to see everything protect everyone, be the last line between safety and chaos. His chest hurt where the sniper's elbow had connected. His hands ached from gripping handlebars for hours. His mind kept showing him images of Lynn dying, of his daughter Lily's funeral, of every person he'd failed to save, ranged in a line that stretched back 50 years. But Emma was alive. Phantom's daughter was alive. And they'd stay that way or Marcus would die trying. The quarry appeared ahead, lights blazing, vehicles arranged in defensive positions, men moving with purpose and weapons, and the confidence of people who thought they held all the advantages. Marcus keyed his radio. Remember, we don't kill unless we have to. We disarm. We contain. We show overwhelming force and give them one chance to walk away. Just one. The convoy stopped a quarter-mile out, faced the quarry, faced Nero's fortress, faced impossible odds and the terrible arithmetic of violence. And every single rider revved their engine at the exact same moment. The sound was thunder, was judgment, was the promise that some debts could only be paid in showing up, and they'd shown up with everything they had. Ahead through the quarry lights, Marcus could see men scrambling, Nero's confidence cracking as he realized what he faced. Not 7 old bikers, an army, a brotherhood, a promise kept. Marcus's phone buzzed one last time. Text from Nero, "You're insane." Marcus typed back, "Yes, now let them go." He put the phone away, looked at Ghost, at Cole, at Tommy and Jackson and Alex with his shoulder wrapped but still riding, at Phantom, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him from flying apart, at Doc preparing medical supplies because people were going to bleed tonight and someone had to stop it, at Emma watching through the window, scared and brave and trusting them to finish what they'd started. "All right," Marcus's voice carried across the radio. "Let's bring them home." The convoy rolled forward, toward the quarry, toward confrontation, toward the moment when everything either worked or failed catastrophically. And in the distance, through rain that had started again, Nero watched them come with the slow realization that he'd miscalculated everything. The FBI descended on Pinewood like a biblical plague. 47 agents in 12 black SUVs, warrant paperwork thick as phone books, forensic accountants who could follow money through shell corporations and offshore accounts, the way Carlos Rodriguez could track enemy combatants across desert terrain. Richard Chandler's empire crumbled in 72 hours. Not metaphorically, actually crumbled. Federal seizure notices appeared on every Chandler Industries property. Bank accounts frozen. Assets locked. The mansion on the hill surrounded by yellow tape and agents carrying boxes of evidence that would take prosecutors 6 months to catalog. Braden watched from Jack's garage, standing beside men who, 3 days ago, he would have crossed the street to avoid. Now they were the only family he had left. His mother had called once. Lawyers instructed her to maintain distance. Liability concerns. The 17-year-old who'd spit on a waitress was now a federal witness against his own father, and that kind of testimony came with the consequences that extended beyond courtrooms. Bear brought him coffee. Black, no sugar, the way working men drank it. "Kid, you got somewhere to stay." Braden's laugh came out hollow. "My trust fund's frozen. My credit cards are canceled. I've got $200 cash and a car I can't afford to insure." "That's not what I asked." Braden looked at Bear. 6'7" of muscle and gentleness and something else. Certainty. The kind that came from knowing exactly who you were and what you stood for. "No, I don't have anywhere. You do now." Bear pulled keys from his pocket. "Apartment above my garage. Nothing fancy, but it's warm and it's yours as long as you need it. I can't pay rent, didn't ask you to. Asked you to keep showing up at that diner. Keep learning what work means. Keep becoming someone your kids will be proud of instead of ashamed." Braden took the keys. His hands shook. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Earn it." The preliminary hearing happened on a Thursday. Federal courthouse in Helena, 2 hours north. Jack rode with Marcus and Doc, Rosa and Maya, following in Rosa's Civic that Bear had fixed for free, because that's what brothers did. The courthouse steps were circus. News crews from Seattle and Denver and Salt Lake City. Protesters holding signs that said, "Protect our children and justice for victims." Counter-protesters hired by what remained of Chandler's legal team holding signs about due process and presumption of innocence. Jack pushed through the crowd with Maya's hand in his. People recognized him from news coverage. Some called him hero. Others called him vigilante. He ignored both. Heroes didn't carry ghosts of Sarah and Michael Brennan for decades. Vigilantes didn't work within systems, even when systems were broken. Inside the courtroom smelled like old wood and older justice. Richard Chandler sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit that probably cost less than his morning coffee used to. His lawyers surrounded him like antibodies fighting infection. The prosecution table held Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Park, 38 years old, daughter of Korean War refugees, reputation for taking apart organized crime figures the way surgeons remove tumors. Precise, ruthless, complete. She'd spent 72 hours reviewing evidence Braden provided. bank transfers showing payments to shell corporations, manifests listing human cargo by age and country of origin, correspondence with buyers across 6 states, video footage from security cameras Richard thought he'd deleted. The judge entered. Honorable Margaret Reeves, 64, former public defender who'd spent 30 years watching poor people get crushed by systems that protected wealth. Her expression said she'd been waiting her entire career for a case like this. Park stood. Your Honor, the government requests remand without bail. Mr. Chandler poses substantial flight risk. He has access to private aircraft properties in 4 countries and demonstrated willingness to engage in witness intimidation. Defense counsel shot up. Your Honor, Mr. Chandler is a pillar of this community. He employs 400 people. He has deep roots. He's not going anywhere. Park's smile was surgical. Mr. Chandler employed 400 people. As of this morning, Chandler Industries filed for bankruptcy. Those 400 people are now unemployed because your client used their legitimate business as cover for human trafficking. As for deep roots, we have evidence suggesting he was preparing to flee the country when federal agents arrested him. She produced documents, plane tickets to Brazil, $50,000 cash in a go bag, passport under an assumed name. The courtroom murmured. Judge Reeves banged her gavel once. Remand granted, no bail. Trial date set for March 15th, next case. Richard Chandler's face went the color of cement. His lawyer started talking fast, but the marshals were already moving, cuffing him, leading him out through the side door. He looked back once, found Braden sitting in the gallery beside Jack Morrison. Father and son locked eyes. Braden didn't look away, didn't flinch. Just sat there with a teddy bear Maya had given him that morning, for courage, sitting beside men who'd shown him what strength actually meant. Richard's expression cycled through rage and betrayal and something else. Recognition, maybe. That the son he'd raised to inherit an empire had instead chosen to burn it down. That wealth and power and 3 generations of Chandler legacy had produced a boy who'd rather have nothing than have everything built on bodies. Then he was gone. Door closing. Footsteps fading. The Chandler empire ending, not with violence, but with the quiet click of handcuffs and the rustle of legal paper. Outside, reporters swarmed, microphones and cameras, and questions shouted over each other. Jack walked past them, holding Maya's hand. Rosa on the other side. The Brotherhood forming a corridor through the chaos. One reporter broke through. Mr. Morrison, how do you respond to critics who say you took the law into your own hands? Jack stopped, looked at the camera. We didn't take the law into our own hands. We put it back in the hands of people it was supposed to protect. But you broke into private property, assaulted security guards. Vigilante justice, 24 people were being held as slaves. Jack's voice stayed level, but something dangerous moved underneath. An 8-year-old girl was kidnapped. The local sheriff was compromised. We did what needed doing while we waited for the system to catch up. And when the system arrived, we stepped back and let it work. Do you regret any of your actions? Jack looked at Maya, at Rosa, at the Brotherhood standing behind him. Every day I regret not acting sooner. For Sarah, for Michael Brennan, for everyone who called for help and got advice instead of presents. The news cycle ran for 3 days. National coverage, CNN and Fox News and MSNBC, all running the same footage. 200 bikers mobilizing to rescue trafficking victims. The Brotherhood becoming symbol for something people couldn't quite name but desperately wanted to believe in. Donations flooded the Iron Brotherhood. $50,000 the first day, $200,000 by week's end. Marcus set up a foundation. Maya's fund, named after the 8-year-old who'd stood up to power and survived. Money designated for trafficking victims, medical care, housing, job training, legal assistance. Braden worked at the diner every day, morning shift, 5 a.m. to 2 p.m., dishes, then cooking, then serving customers who ranged from supportive to hostile. Some left extra tips, others left pennies and notes calling him traitor. He kept showing up. Ruby watched him with eyes that had seen 70 years of human nature in its infinite variations. She'd buried 2 husbands, raised 4 kids alone, survived poverty and prejudice and everything Montana winters could throw at someone. She knew authentic transformation when she saw it. End of his 2nd week, she pulled him aside. You're staying, what? After the trial, after the cameras leave, after everyone forgets, You're staying here washing dishes, making eggs, learning what real work means. Braden nodded. Yeah, I am. Why? Because for 17 years I learned how to take. Someone needs to teach me how to give. Ruby smiled. Looked like her face might crack from disuse. You'll do, kid, you'll do. But Pinewood itself was fracturing. The Brotherhood had exposed more than just Richard Chandler's crimes. They'd revealed how much of the town's economy depended on looking the other way. How many people had taken Chandler money and Chandler jobs and chosen comfortable ignorance over uncomfortable truth? 400 people were unemployed. Families struggled. Businesses that depended on Chandler Industries contracts went under. And some of them blamed the Brotherhood instead of the man who'd betrayed them all. Vandalism started small. Spray paint on garage doors, slashed tires, graffiti calling them vigilantes, and worse. Then it escalated. Marcus's bike torched in his driveway. Bear's garage windows smashed. Threatening letters appearing in mailboxes. The town council called emergency meeting. Jack attended with Marcus and Doc. Town hall packed beyond capacity. Angry voices and pointed fingers and the kind of rage that came from people whose security had been ripped away. Mayor Linda Castellano tried maintaining order with a gavel that sounded like a toy gun against the noise. She was 59, third-generation Pinewood remembered when the mine employed 3,000 people and the town had a future instead of just a past. The Brotherhood destroyed this town. This came from Dale Hutchins, former Chandler Industries foreman, now unemployed with a mortgage and 3 kids. We had jobs. We had stability. You self-righteous bastards decided your morals were more important than our livelihoods. Jack stood. The room went quiet. Not because they respected him, because something in his posture said he'd walked through fire and wasn't afraid of their heat. Your morals, his voice carried. Not ours. Your choice to take money built on human misery. Your decision to ignore where that money came from. Don't put your guilt on us. We didn't know. You didn't want to know. There's a difference, same difference between showing up and sending thoughts and prayers. We learned that lesson too late with Michael Brennan. We're not learning it late again. The room shifted. People remembered Michael Brennan. Local boy, war hero, came home broken, asked for help, got platitudes, put a gun in his mouth. The Brotherhood had dissolved after that, everyone carrying guilt too heavy to share. A woman stood in the back. Teresa Wong, 46, ran the grocery store her parents had opened in '83. My daughter was in that warehouse. She'd been missing for 4 months. Police said she probably ran away, that she was a troubled kid looking for attention. The Brotherhood found her in 18 hours. So when you talk about what they destroyed, remember what they saved. Another voice. Frank Delgado, Vietnam vet, 71, wheelchair bound. I served with Marcus in '68. We walked through hell together. And I'm telling you now, if the Brotherhood hadn't acted, those 24 people would be dead or disappeared. Sometimes the law needs help catching up to justice. The meeting dissolved into argument that went nowhere. People choosing sides based on whether their immediate comfort mattered more than uncomfortable truth. Jack left halfway through. Nothing to be gained from watching people twist themselves into knots justifying cowardice. Outside, Braden waited by Jack's bike. They're scared. Yeah, scared people do stupid things. Jack looked at this kid who 3 weeks ago had been one of them, now standing in December cold, waiting to warn the men who'd destroyed his life and given him a new one. Yeah, they do. The stupid thing came 2 nights later. Jack was home alone. His house on the edge of town's small ranch on 3 acres workshop out back, where he restored old bikes and tried not to think about the daughter whose room he'd kept intact for 20 years, like a shrine to failure. He heard the trucks before he saw them. Diesels, big ones, 3 of them blocking his driveway at 11 p.m. 12 men piled out, some he recognized. Dale Hutchins, former Chandler Industries employees. Others were strangers, probably hired, the kind of men who showed up when violence was needed and conscience was optional. Dale led them, carried a baseball bat. Others had tire irons and anger and the false courage that comes from numbers. We're done with you, Morrison, done with your Brotherhood thinking you're better than us. Jack stood on his porch, didn't move, didn't reach for the phone or the shotgun inside. Just stood there in the cold with his breath fogging and his hands loose at his sides. Leave now while you still can, Or what old man Dale took a step forward? You'll call your biker friends, we're not scared of you anymore. You should be. The voice came from the darkness. Maya stepped into the porch light, 8 years old, wearing her father's jacket, holding her phone with 911 already dialed. What the hell is a kid doing here calling the police? Maya's voice didn't shake, and recording everything. Her phone was pointed at Dale's face, red light showing it was capturing everything. You want to hurt Mr. Jack, you do it on camera. Let everyone see what you really are. Dale's face went uncertain. Put the phone down, kid. No, I said put it down. And I said no, my daddy died fighting bullies. Mr. Jack showed up when nobody else would. I'm not scared of you. Jack's throat closed up. This 8-year-old warrior standing between him and violence because she'd learned from her father and from him that standing tall when you're scared is what bravery means. Dale raised the bat, the other men moved forward, and then headlights lit up the driveway. Not one truck, 20. The entire Iron Brotherhood pouring onto Jack's property in response to the alert Doc had sent when his security system caught the first truck entering the property line. 200 men in 12 minutes. All of them stepping off bikes. All of them standing between Jack and the mob. Not raising fists. Not threatening. Just standing there with the weight of combined service and sacrifice and the kind of strength that didn't need to announce itself. Marcus walked forward. Dale, you want to blame someone for your problems. We get it. Easier to blame us than to blame yourself for ignoring what was happening. But you touch Jack Morrison, you touch a Marine who saved 17 men in Kandahar. You touch any of my brothers, you touch men who have bled for this country. So here's your choice. Leave now and we forget this happened. Stay and find out why you don't fuck with veterans. Dale looked at his crew, looked at 200 bikers, did the math, turned and walked. His men followed. Trucks started, drove off into the night, leaving only the memory of shame and the certain knowledge they'd gotten off easy. Jack knelt down to Maya. What are you doing here, warrior? Mom's closing the diner. She let me come with Mr. Bear. I wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm okay because of you. Maya hugged him, Bear's teddy bear caught between them. My dad said the strongest people protect the weak. You protected me. I wanted to protect you. Something broke in Jack's chest. Not clean like bone snapping. Messy and complicated like ice melting. After a winter that lasted 20 years. He'd spent 2 decades believing he'd failed Sarah. Failed Michael Brennan. Believing he didn't deserve redemption or forgiveness or another chance. And this 8-year-old had just shown him what his daughter would have wanted. Not his guilt, his continued service. His decision to keep showing up even when showing up was hard. The tears came then, silent, unstoppable. 20 years of grief and shame and failure pouring out in front of 200 brothers who'd seen him at his worst and stuck around anyway. Marcus put a hand on Jack's shoulder. Let it out, brother. You've earned it. And Jack did. He let himself break in front of Maya and the Brotherhood in the Montana night that suddenly felt less cold. Let himself feel the weight of Sarah's loss without the added burden of believing he deserved it. Let himself feel Michael Brennan's absence without drowning in guilt. Let himself imagine that maybe his daughter and his brother were somewhere watching him kneel down for an 8-year-old and thinking, yeah, finally got it right. Doc Chen pulled Maya gently away. Let's give him a minute, little one. Is he okay? Yeah, he's healing. The trial started March 15th as scheduled. Federal Courthouse Helena. Jury selection took 3 days. 6 men, 6 women ages ranging from 32 to 68, farmers and teachers and small business owners, and 1 retired Air Force colonel who'd served in Vietnam with Marcus. Prosecutor Park built her case like she was constructing a cathedral. Foundation first. Bank records showing Richard Chandler moving money through 17 shell corporations. Testimony from forensic accountants tracing every dollar from legitimate business to human cargo. Then the walls, manifests, purchase orders, correspondence with buyers that use the language of livestock trading to describe human beings. Then the roof, the victims themselves, 24 people taking the stand, speaking through translators when necessary, describing how they'd been promised us and given slavery, how they'd been held in the mine complex with armed guards and threats against families back home, how they'd lived in darkness until 200 bikers showed up like an army of angels wearing leather and denim. Defense counsel tried poking holes, suggested victims were lying for asylum benefits, argued the correspondence was taken out of context, claimed Richard had no knowledge of his facility being used for trafficking. Someone on his staff had gone rogue. He was a victim too, of betrayal, of ambitious prosecutors, of a media circus that had already convicted him in public opinion. It rang hollow, especially when Braden took the stand, 17 years old, wearing a suit someone from the Brotherhood had bought him, haircut professional, hands still calloused from 3 months washing dishes. He walked to the witness box looking like someone who'd aged a decade in 12 weeks. Park stood. "Mr. Chandler, please state your relationship to the defendant." "He's my father." "And you lived in his house your entire life?" "Yes." "Were you aware of his business practices?" "Not at first." Braden's voice stayed steady. "I thought my father was a legitimate businessman. Someone to be proud of. Then 3 months ago, I found files on his computer. Bank transfers, manifests listing people as cargo, communications with buyers across multiple states." "What did you do with this information?" "Nothing." Braden's shame was visible. "I did nothing for 3 months. I told myself it wasn't my problem, that confronting him would cost me everything. So I looked away, just like everyone else in Pinewood. Just like people looked away when Michael Brennan needed help. Just like people looked away when Sarah Morrison called for her father." Defense counsel objected. "Relevance, Your Honor." Judge Reeves stared him down. "The witness is explaining his state of mind." Overruled. Park continued. "When did you decide to come forward when they kidnapped an 8-year-old girl?" "Maya Martinez. She was 8 years old and they took her to use as leverage against the Brotherhood. And I realized I had a choice. Keep protecting my father and become him. Or turn over the evidence and maybe become someone worth being. Someone who shows up instead of looking away. You understand the consequences of your testimony. I understand my trust fund is gone. My family has disowned me. I'll probably never go to college. But I can look at myself in the mirror. That's worth more than money." The courtroom was silent. Defense counsel tried cross-examination, tried suggesting Braden was lying for attention, that he resented his father's authority, that he'd fabricated evidence. But Braden didn't crack. He'd spent 3 months learning that real work meant showing up even when everything hurt. This was just another kind of work. Richard Chandler took the stand in his own defense, against his lawyer's advice. Pride wouldn't let him sit silent while his son called him a monster. He wore his expensive suit, his confident bearing, his certainty that charisma and status could override evidence. He spoke about building Chandler Industries from his father's legacy, about employing 400 people, about contributions to the community, about being a pillar of Pinewood for 30 years. Then Park stood for cross-examination. "Mr. Chandler, you claimed ignorance of trafficking operations occurring at your facility. Is that correct?" "That's correct. Yet you personally signed a lease agreement as for the Blackstone Mine Complex. My staff handles routine paperwork." Park produced a document. "This isn't routine. It's a personal guarantee of liability. Your signature. Your notary. Dated 3 years ago. You knew exactly what that property was being used for." Richard's confidence flickered. "That's a standard business document." "Standard for what business, Mr. Chandler? What legitimate operation requires you to personally guarantee liability at a remote mining facility?" "Storage. Equipment storage. Equipment that requires armed guards on 24-hour rotation, that generates power bills suggesting full occupancy, that receives regular deliveries of food and medical supplies." "I wasn't involved in day-to-day operations." Park smiled. "Then let's talk about something you were involved in. Bank transfers, $200,000 to a company called Blackstone Holdings, an LLC registered in Delaware. Want to guess who owns Blackstone Holdings Silence? You do, Mr. Chandler. You're paying yourself to lease property you already own. Why would you do that unless you were deliberately creating false paper trail? That's a mischaracterization, is it?" Park produced more documents. "Here's the ownership structure. Chandler Industries owns the mine. Blackstone Holdings leases it. You own both companies. You're essentially paying yourself rent. That's not business practice. That's money laundering." Defense counsel objected. "Speculation." Judge Reeves looked at the documents. Overruled. "Answer the question, Mr. Chandler." Richard's face was cement. "I want to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights." "Too late." You chose to testify. Answer the question. And Richard Chandler, who'd spent 30 years believing money made him untouchable, realized in that moment he'd lost. Not just the trial, everything: legacy, reputation, freedom. The empire his grandfather built and his father expanded, and he destroyed through greed and arrogance, in the certainty that rules were for other people. The jury deliberated 4 hours, came back with guilty verdicts on all counts: human trafficking, kidnapping, money laundering, conspiracy, witness intimidation. 17 counts total, each carrying mandatory minimum sentences that would add up to more years than Richard Chandler had left to live. Judge Reeves set sentencing for May 1st. Ramon continued. Marshals led him away in handcuffs while news cameras caught every moment. The Chandler family ending not with dignity, but with the orange jumpsuit and shackles and the absolute certainty that wealth couldn't buy everything after all. Outside the courthouse, Jack stood with the Brotherhood and Rosa and Maya and Braden. News crews swarmed, but they ignored them. This wasn't about attention. Never had been. It was about 24 people getting their lives back. About an 8-year-old learning that standing up to power was possible. About a 17-year-old choosing to become someone different than what he'd been raised to be. Maya tugged Jack's sleeve. What happens now? Now Jack smiled. Now we go home, and we keep showing up. For everyone who needs it. That's all any of us can do. But what about the people who are mad at us, the ones who blame us for losing their jobs? Some people will always choose comfort over truth, but some will remember why the jobs were lost. And maybe they'll think twice before looking away next time. Marcus put his hand on Jack's shoulder. We did good, brother. Yeah. For Sarah, for Michael, for everyone we couldn't save before. We finally did good. But Pinewood's healing was slower than verdicts. The town had lost its economic engine. 400 unemployed people became 450, 500. Businesses closed. For sale signs multiplied like metastases. Young people left for Bozeman or Billings or anywhere that had a future. The Brotherhood organized job fairs, brought in contacts from other towns, set up training programs for new skills. But you couldn't replace a company that had employed 1 in 6 people overnight. Recovery would take years, maybe decades. Some people thanked them, others cursed them. Most just survived day to day and tried not to think about what could have been if they'd looked away like everyone else. Sheriff Tom Dalton resigned, no charges filed. Federal prosecutors cut a deal. He'd testify against Chandler, lose his pension, but avoid prison. Small mercy for a man who'd spent 20 years compromising himself one decision at a time until he'd become someone he didn't recognize. His replacement was Deputy Frank Morrison. No relation to Jack. Young guy, 32, Afghanistan veteran, Purple Heart. He walked into the sheriff's office on his first day and found a note from Dalton taped to the desk. Don't make my mistakes. The job is serving people, not serving yourself. I forgot that. Don't you forget it. Frank kept the note, pinned it above his desk. Reminder that good intentions without good choices meant nothing. Braden continued working at Ruby's Diner. 6 months, then a year. He enrolled in community college, criminal justice program. People asked why. He said because he'd seen what justice looked like when it actually worked and wanted to be part of that system instead of the problem. He moved from Bear's apartment to a tiny rental he shared with 2 other students, kept his diner shifts, kept showing up at Brotherhood gatherings. Not a member. You had to be a veteran, but honorary family, the kid who'd burned his life down and built something better from the ashes. Rosa got promoted to manager at Ruby's, 20% raise, health insurance. First time in her life, she wasn't one crisis away from catastrophe. She framed her first paycheck and hung it in Maya's room. Reminder that dignity wasn't negotiable, and standing up for yourself eventually paid off. Maya turned 9, then 10. She joined the track team, fastest kid in her grade despite the asthma. She kept Bear's teddy bear on her bed and Sarah's photo that Jack had given her on her desk. 2 talismans, 2 reminders that loss could be transformed into purpose if you were brave enough to trust them. Jack started sleeping through the night. First time in 20 years. The nightmares didn't stop, but they got quieter. Less frequent. He could think about Sarah without the guilt crushing him. Could remember her smile instead of just her funeral. Could think about Michael Brennan and feel sadness instead of shame. He visited their graves every Sunday, brought flowers, told them about Maya, about the Brotherhood, about learning that redemption wasn't about erasing failure, but about choosing differently next time. The Brotherhood's past failure had become its driving mission. Marcus made it official policy. No veteran asks for help and gets told to be strong. No veteran calls and hears dial tone. Show up or shut up. Those were the only options now. 5 years after Richard Chandler's conviction, he died in federal prison. Heart attack. Nobody attended the funeral except lawyers closing the estate. His remaining assets went to the Maya Fund per court order. $4 million, restitution for lives destroyed and almost destroyed, justice incomplete but present. Braden didn't go to the funeral. He was in his final year at Montana State by then, having transferred after finishing community college with perfect grades. 22 years old, still planning law school, still planning to work for the public defender's office, still giving back what had been given to him. He still worked at Ruby's every Saturday morning, not because he needed the money, because he needed the reminder of where he'd come from and who he'd almost become. 10 years after the trial, Maya graduated high school, valedictorian, track scholarship to University of Montana, college acceptance letters from 7 schools. She chose Montana because home mattered and roots ran deep. She gave a speech at graduation about courage and standing up to power, and how change started with one person refusing to look away. The Brotherhood sat in the front row. 60 members now. Jack at center, 72 years old, gray beard, and scarred hands and eyes that had finally found peace. He wore Sarah's photo pinned to his vest. Wore it everywhere. Reminder that loss could become purpose. That failure could become mission. That redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but about choosing better futures. Maya's speech ended with a story. When I was 8 years old, I watched a boy spit on my mother, and I thought that was just how the world worked. Rich people hurt poor people, and everyone looked away. But then a Marine named Jack Morrison knelt down and looked me in the eye and said, "No, that's not how it works. That's how it worked. But we can change it." And he did, and we did. And now I'm standing here telling you that you can too. You can be the person who shows up, who doesn't look away, who chooses courage over comfort, because that's what changes the world. Not laws or money or power, just people choosing to stand tall when they're scared. The audience stood, applause thundered, and Jack Morrison cried for the 3rd time in a decade. Not from grief this time, from pride, from the certainty that Maya understood what her father David had died for, what Sarah would have wanted, what Michael Brennan's death had taught them all. That showing up mattered, that standing together worked, that sometimes old men on motorcycles could change the world by simply refusing to look away. The years that followed brought quiet growth. Maya earned her degree in social work, came back to Pinewood to work at the shelter the Maya Fund had established. Braden graduated law school at 25, spent 2 years as a public defender in Helena before returning to open a practice in Pinewood, defending people who couldn't afford lawyers, winning cases that mattered, earning respect that couldn't be bought. The Maya Fund grew to $5 million. They bought the old Chandler mansion, converted it into a comprehensive facility, named it Sarah's house, after Jack's daughter, the girl who'd needed help and didn't get it, the loss that had launched a mission that had saved dozens of lives and counting. Medical care, counseling, job training, housing for up to 30 people at a time. Braden handled all their legal work pro bono. Maya ran the social services programs. Rosa volunteered every weekend. The Brotherhood provided security and maintenance, and the kind of protective presence that said nobody here would ever be victimized again. And Jack Morrison, now 73, decided it was time. He called a meeting, not at the clubhouse, at Ruby's Diner, table 7, where it had all started with spit and courage and an 8-year-old choosing bravery over fear. They gathered on a Saturday evening after the diner closed. Jack and Marcus and Bear and Doc, Rosa and Maya and Braden, Ruby in her wheelchair, 80 years old now, sharp as ever. New Brotherhood members and old, veterans and honorary family. People who'd learned that Brotherhood meant showing up even when showing up was hard. Jack stood, tapped his water glass for attention. "I'm stepping down as president. 73 is time. Been leading for 8 years. Someone younger should carry it forward." Groans of protest. He raised his hand. I'm not disappearing, just passing the torch. And I'm recommending Braden Chandler as next president. Shocked silence. Braden's face went white. Jack, I'm not a veteran. I can't. You're a veteran of a different kind of war. Jack's voice was firm. You fought yourself and won. You burned your life down because it was built on bodies. You've spent 10 years proving that people can change. That seems like exactly who should lead men who believe in second chances. But the bylaws. We're changing the bylaws. Marcus stood beside Jack. Brotherhood means more than military service. It means service. Period. Braden served this community for a decade. Washed dishes when he could have run. Testified when he could have stayed silent. Came back when he could have left. That's a brother. The vote was unanimous. Braden Chandler, 27 years old, former rich kid who'd spit on a waitress, new president of the Iron Brotherhood. He stood shaking, looking at men who'd shown him what strength meant. I don't deserve this. Jack put the patch in his hand. None of us do. That's why we keep earning it. Every day, by showing up, by choosing better, by being the people Michael Brennan needed, the people Sarah needed, the people we all needed when we were lost and broken and didn't know how to ask for help. Braden took the patch, tears streaming. I won't let you down. You already haven't. Jack's voice was gentle. That's why you're here. They rode one more time with Jack leading, 60 bikes, through Pinewood streets that had seen them at their lowest and watched them rise, past the courthouse where justice had been served, past Sarah's house where 30 trafficking survivors currently lived and healed, past the diner where it had all started with spit and courage and refusal to look away. They rode to the cemetery on the edge of town, to the section where veterans rested, to two stones side by side. Sarah Ann Morrison, 1976-2004, beloved daughter. Michael James Brennan, 1981-2014, brother in arms. Jack knelt down between them, old knees crackling but still working, still able to kneel for what mattered. He placed flowers on each grave, fresh ones, like he did every Sunday without fail for 10 years. We did it. His voice came out quiet, but the 60 men behind him heard every word. We figured out how to show up, how to be the people you needed us to be, how to turn our failure into mission and our guilt into purpose. Behind him, 60 men stood in silence, helmets off, heads bowed, honoring the dead by living better, by showing up, by proving that sometimes old men on motorcycles could change the world one act of courage at a time. Sarah, baby girl, Jack touched her stone. I know you've been watching. I know you saw me kneel down for Maya that first day. Saw me finally do for someone else what I didn't do for you. I'm sorry it took me so long to learn, but I learned. And I'm not stopping. He turned to Michael's stone. And you, brother, we let you down. All of us. We gave you words when you needed presence. We told you to be strong when you needed us to be strong enough to carry you. We failed you, but we're not failing anyone else. Every veteran who calls us now gets a visit within 4 hours. Not advice, not platitudes. A visit, a brother, a hand. We learned from you, Michael. Hard lesson, but we learned. Maya approached, knelt beside Jack, put her hand on Sarah's stone. I never met you, but Mr. Jack talks about you all the time. Says you were brave and funny and saw right through people's bullshit. I think we would have been friends. Jack's arm went around her shoulders. Yeah, warrior. You woulda, and I promise, Maya's voice was steady. I promise to keep showing up, to keep standing tall when I'm scared, to keep being brave like my dad and like Mr. Jack taught me. So you can rest. We've got this. Braden stepped forward, knelt on Jack's other side. Michael Brennan, I never knew you, but Jack told me your story. How you asked for help and got told to be strong. How that broke you. How your death broke the Brotherhood for 10 years. He looked at the assembled bikers. You saved more people than you'll ever know, because your death taught us all that showing up matters more than anything. So thank you, and I promise, as long as I'm president, no veteran asks for help and hears anything except we're on our way. Rosa knelt, placed flowers. Sarah, I never met you either, but your father saved my family, gave my daughter hope when the world tried to crush her. So I'm raising Maya to honor your memory, to be brave, to stand up, to refuse to look away. Your death wasn't meaningless. It changed everything. One by one, the Brotherhood members approached, each placing a flower, each making a promise to show up, to answer calls, to be present instead of offering platitudes, to honor the dead by living better. The sun set over Montana mountains. Cold wind carried the smell of pine and snow and something else. Hope, maybe. Or just the certainty that tomorrow they'd wake up and choose again. Choose to show up. Choose to stand tall. Choose to be the people who didn't look away. Jack stood last, his knees protesting but holding, 73 years old, scarred, weathered, but finally at peace with the ghost that had haunted him for decades. He looked at Sarah's stone one more time. I love you, baby girl. Always will. But I'm not carrying guilt anymore. Just love. Just memory. Just a determination to be better every day. He touched Michael's stone. And you, brother, rest easy. We've got the watch now. Nobody gets left behind, not anymore. They rode back to town as darkness fell. 60 bikes, engines thundering. Not a war cry, not anymore. A promise made to the dead, kept by the living. That brotherhood meant showing up every time, no exceptions. And Jack Morrison, former president of the Iron Brotherhood, rode in the middle of the pack now instead of leading. His time at the front was done, but his mission continued, would continue until his last breath, because Sarah and Michael Brennan weren't just ghosts anymore. They were purpose, they were mission. They were the reason 60 men woke up every morning and chose to be better. The diner lights glowed in the distance. Table 7 visible through the window. Still reserved, still marked with a brass plaque. For warriors who stand tall when they're scared. And in that moment, riding through December old with his brothers around him, and peace finally settling into bones that had ached with guilt for 20 years, Jack Morrison understood something fundamental. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about honoring it, learning from it, letting it shape you into someone who made different choices, better choices. Choices that meant when your time came and you stood before whatever judgment awaited you, could say with certainty, I failed. I learned. I changed. And I kept showing up until I couldn't anymore. That was enough. That would always be enough.